I studied at UCLan in Preston, and I had a huge opportunity to do an internship for Professor Alan Rice, that I'm sure many of you already know him. And this talk about an Ibo Boy is actually part for this research that I conducted in summer 2019. So yeah, so this is actually going to be about him, and I just wanted to mention that some parts are slightly distressing. I just wanted to say a trigger warning, really, because even last time, right, there has been a talk about, it's this topic, and I just wanted to mention it before I start. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm also nervous because I haven't been publicly speaking for ages because of the pandemic. So please, I apologize in advance. Also pronunciation-wise as well. I'm not a native speaker. But yeah, okay, I'm going to start now. So let me just share the screen. Can you see it? Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so in 2018, the University of Glasgow conducted a project titled Runaway Slaves in Britain, which is called Bondage, Freedom and Race in the 18th Century, which is mapping the presence of African, Asian and Indigenous American descent in 18th century Britain through newspaper advertisements placed by the owners. This research revealed the extensiveness and severity of slave ownership on the British lands. But further, nice. But further unveiled the ghostly presence of people afflicted by this disturbing part of history, which still awaits appropriate recognition among the public. The story of Ibo Boy was part of research for Professor Alan Rice's pedagogical tool, as I previously mentioned. And Ibo Boy is actually one of the historical characters that which are included in his dramatic tableau. Now, I'll talk about the little we know from the newspaper advertisement from the Edinburgh Evening Courant, informing of a runaway slave from Heysham. The newspaper cut from the Edinburgh Evening Courant is the most extended version of the 3 advertisements looking for a runaway enslaved boy from an Ibo country, which is a region in Nigeria. He was actually displaced and found himself in Heysham. He was taken to Heysham. And he was placed into newspapers by his owner, Mr. Reverend Thomas Clarkson. There are no records of baptism in Heysham or Lancaster, pointing out a black boy within the time frame of the boy's presence in Lancashire. There is no further mention in local newspapers or criminal records. Consequently, to develop the full image of this historical figure with such limited information presents a challenging task, consisting of speculation and uncertainty. On the other hand, any attempt focusing on recovering and reconstructing the story of this boy from originally from Nigeria and then from Heysham represents a small but significant aspect of the narrative on the hidden histories of Black presence in Lancashire and overall in the UK. Now, on this slide, you can see the 3 adverts put up by Reverend Clarkson. The small one in the corner is the first one from Williamson's Liverpool Advertiser and Mercantile Register, which was actually published a few days after the boy ran away. So to clarify, the date of the boy's escape is the morning of Monday, 26th of August, 1765. So I just thought it would be important to kind of mention this date because that was the date when he presumably gained his freedom. The other advert is from St. James Chronicle, the British Evening Post, which is the one on the top, and the biggest one is actually the one from the Edinburgh Evening Courant. So you can like have a look, but I think I'm gonna be talking in the upcoming slides about the one, and there is going to be a transcription as well, so you can read what it says later on. Now, even though this story is about the boy and he should not be hidden behind his owner, sadly, right now, we have a little information. So initially, to kind of gain to see the full picture, we have to look on Reverend Thomas Clarkson, his owner. So church papers at Chester show that he was educated at Queen's College in Oxford, graduating as BA in 1753. And following his father's footsteps, the father also studied actually at Queen's College, finishing as MA in 1714. And his father became Reverend, serving in Heysham. So the Clarkson family was actually, I think they're not originally from Heysham, but they basically set there and stay there for generations, or at least we know at least about 2-3 generations staying there. It is evident that Clarkson comes from a scholarly and theologically concerned family because of his father becoming a reverend, and I think the grandfather, but this is not confirmed. The grandfather also was a reverend. So according to Heysham Parish records, Reverend Mr. Thomas Clarkson, born 1728 and passing 1788, and his wife Hannah, he had children Elizabeth, Thomas, Anna, and Townley. Now, Thomas later becomes a reverend, same as his father, and so does Townley, so the son also becomes reverend of Heysham. The archival material related to him includes personal correspondence of his endeavor in candidacy on a post of a rector in Heysham, and the letter highlights kind of like his qualities and suitability for the role of a clergyman. And to read those papers that he wanted to become a rector of Heysham, and he eventually did. But it's just he sort of tries to highlight the suitability and how uncomfortable it is to read it, or even think about the fact that Clarkson was probably viewed as a man of quality, in Heysham, as a respectable person to hold such a position. And only a few years later, or even then, he becomes a slave owner. Yeah, we don't know when he gets hold of the boy from Ibo, so we don't actually know. But he eventually becomes a rector in 1756, and there is not much of other relevant information about their life in Heysham, but these are the only materials that we got. It's his last will, and it's the correspondence of the candidacy. So yeah, as a rector and a patron, eventually becomes a patron of St. Peter's Church in Heysham, which is the picture, as you can see. He kind of like posed as a significant figure to the local community. And you will also find actually a plaque dedicated to him and his father inside the church. So there is a stone carved memory of this reverend inside the church. So both the father and Thomas Clarkson as well. Yes, again, his faith did not obstruct him from enslaving a fellow man. And on the contrary, this is, I think, significant to kind of mention, the Anglican Church was substantially involved within the slavery machinery. In 1830s, the British government questionably compensated slave owners instead of the slaves themselves for the loss of labor, and the Anglican Church received extensive financial sums as compensation for the abolition of slavery by British government. Thus, Reverend Clarkson in Heysham was not an exception in terms of clergymen owning a slave. So I visited Heysham, and it was 2 years back, to learn more about the place. And when you come to the village, it kind of strikes you with this very wide space, very traditional English seaside village. It's quite small, and the church is quite prominent because it's near the sea, and it's just, is this part of the history when you kind of like you just stand there and you just think about this 16-year-old boy that you're doing research about, and how he felt, 2 centuries back, how it must be so alien to him, and how long has he stayed there, and there is so many questions, and it's quite powerful especially because it's Hisham. It's so it's not like Liverpool, or it's just slightly, it gives you it's different landscape. That's what I'm trying to say. So, and especially when you think about it, the bravery of the boy, and he managed to run away. He was 16, only a few years, younger than me, and what it was like. And yeah, it's just so much to think about. So, but according to the parish records, another person of African descent was baptized in the late 17th century in Hisham. And the boy was not the first Black person to appear in the area, for sure. We know that. And there is a huge chance there might be more, but this is the evidence that we got so far. So, however, the town is situated near Sunderland Point. And Sunderland Point was serving as a port for bigger trading ships, which were unable to continue down the river Lune to Lancaster. And the chances that slaves from anchoring ships will pass through Hisham were potentially high. So, the Clarkson newspapers, like Edwards, remain the only evidence of an enslaved person being in Hisham in the 18th century, which is discovered so far, like being like living there. Because the one baptism record, the one I mentioned, could belong to someone just passing through Hisham. It doesn't necessarily mean that the people stay there. They could literally just baptize the person and then continue on. Now, here you can see the advert from the Edinburgh newspaper, and it has a transcript as well, so it's more accessible, so you can read what it actually said. And the text indicates that Clarkson really cared about the boy as a sort of property, on a sort of property level, and which used to be quite common attitude of the slave owners. And by putting out these adverts and offering handsome reward for the potential finders, demonstrates the level of dehumanization that we can see. And this one piece of historical material allows us to see the unsettling reality, how the men of faith perceived the 16-year-old boy, and it's something that we really need to think about, and it should be talked about more. For example, the remark like the beautiful feature for a Black, it speaks for itself. It speaks volumes about how Clarkson, perhaps we can, I don't want to generalize, but obviously how the society kind of was in the 18th century. And the advert concludes with the sentence, "Whoever harbors him shall be prosecuted with the utmost rigor of the law," which I think really highlights the harsh historical reality of slavery in Britain and the uncomfortable history that needs to be communicated on with public, and the severity of it that really needs to be talked about more. So back to the boy though, we have some information about him, and we know the boy's age, appearance, clothes he had in time of further escape, and we know he spoke broad Lancashire accent, broad Lancashire dialect. The scarification marks suggest that he was African born, and he was around the age of 16. Obviously, these are speculations. Yeah, he might not be 16, but at least we approximately know. But the fact that he spoke with the Lancashire dialect, he could be brought to Hisham in a very young age to adopt it, even though a young person gets accustomed to the environment faster than an adult. So he could be in England for 10 or only 4 years. And then another thing to perhaps kind of like think about is the language. That language is a part of our identity. And this boy from Nigeria was displaced and was brought here to Hisham. And adopts the local dialect, and he kind of like, he took root in the area. And so we're thinking, especially, I mean, from Clarkson's perspective, the dialect could give him easily away in London. It's not just the fact that he's back in London, right? But it was the dialect that could give him away. But luckily, in his will, there is no other mention of an Ibo boy, of the boy. So we are hoping that he managed to run away. Now, the other challenge, the last kind of thing that I wanted to focus on, and I tried to find out, is determine when or how the boy got to the Clarksons. We know 1765 was the date when he ran away, and his potential birth is 1749. And now, other thing is that there are three figures who might be involved with the boys, either displacement, or they could also be just random contacts that Clarkson had. There is Peter Lenox from Perth, whose direct connection with Thomas Clarkson has not been discovered yet. And he probably mainly served as a contact in case the boy would decide to go to Scotland. Although essentially knows that Peter Lenox was actually a merchant, as his name appears in other Scottish newspapers. So we should not exclude the option that he was also somehow involved within the slave trade or the boys' enslavement in particular. Second person is Mr. William Clarkson, who is a brother to Thomas Clarkson and works as a surgeon. He worked as a surgeon in Liverpool on Drury Lane. This lane held records for similar businesses in the 18th century, yet his name is not actually mentioned within the database. Now, if he was a surgeon, there is a big chance he might get involved with slave ships, as slave ships required surgeons on the board to check on the slaves' health conditions. And in this case, William Clarkson could somehow, get Ibo Boy, and then maybe sell it or gave it to his brother. There's so many possibilities, but still, we don't know. There's just something I want to stress, that we don't know how he got here to Hisham from Nigeria, from Ibo, especially like a bit in rural Hisham. Unfortunately, there is lack of records regarding his persona within the ship databases as well. And there is another option, the last possible option is that he might be brought by a mariner as well, passing through Hisham, or who lived in Hisham. There is a record of quite a few people involved in sailing. There is Captain William Lawson, yet unfortunately we do not have a detailed record of those ships he sailed on. And also I kind of double checked, and the Captain William Lawson is not related to the Lawson family from Lancaster. So the only kind of sources linked to his name, I mean, there might be some connection, but I didn't find anything striking. The only sources like linked to his name did not reveal any information about any potential black servants in Hisham. So there are questions waiting to be answered, and I wish in the future somehow we will learn more about the boy, because it's a story of courage and liberation. And to think about this boy, that he was a few years younger than me, and he managed to escape, and how kind of he planned the escape, how long he prepared for it, and how did the newly gained freedom felt, because we really believe that he didn't, I mean, for sure it seems that he didn't return back to Clarkson, but still it's just the idea that he was only 16 and it was too early, and he had to become an adult. And I wonder what he did next when he ran away, what were the next steps, and hopefully there is going to be some information later on. But unfortunately, after he left in August 1765, we don't know much about him. And as mentioned before, it was an intriguing fact that it seems to be, well, not the first, we are not sure, but it might be a black person living in Hisham, but this is just a speculation. There is a baptism record that I also mentioned, and his name was Thomas, and he was a black servant to Captain Peter Woodhouse of Lancaster from 1738. So that's the first mention. But again, Peterwood House also had plantation in West Indies. Therefore, it could be possible that he established an acquaintance with Clarksons, as they were the patrons of the Heshams. So there are those connections, there are those links that kind of like get like get your imagination going, and you kind of think about how the boy ended up there in that seaside village. And then also, if his owner was a reverend, how come he has no baptism record? How come there is not a mention of his name? Because slaves coming from the triangular trade were usually baptized at their arrivals, not necessarily always, but Clarkson does not even mention his name within the advertisement. And if it was a mariner or a captain who brought young boy to Hesham, was it maybe like, we don't know why he ended up there, yeah, or because was he too young to serve at a ship? Yeah, we just don't know. So for now, these things are only debated, as we cannot create a full image of his life journey, of the boy's story, because of the lack of historical material. Yet it is vital to kind of commemorate and like remember stories like his, to celebrate the boy's courage. And next time, maybe if you're Lancastrians or if you're from Lancashire, when you visit Hesham or a similar place actually, and you visit a church, just try to kind of think about it, try to see the bigger picture of the 18th century and how Britain was, because it changes the perspective on the place. Even as picturesque as it is, it changes the landscape. It changed for me, because then you go to the church and you see the mentions of the pious men of Clarkson, Clarkson's names, and you just see it there, like a glorification of those rectors. And then you can't see the ones who are behind those names. And think of an Ibo Boy and individuals whose voices will eventually one day be louder than those who kept them in silence. And I just hope, it's been a very moving journey that I did the research on this boy. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Do we have questions now? No, we have time for questions, or adding some comments. And thank you very, very, very much for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. If anything, anything you can think of, or maybe if you're aware of similar cases, please let me know. Or if you have any questions, yeah.
Are we assuming he'd been here a while if he had a broad accent?
Yeah, that's what we were thinking about. That it seems he might have been here a while. But again, as I mentioned, yeah, because like children and like young people kind of adapt to dialect accents very quickly. But still, we think that he might be in Hesham quite a while. Yeah, Alan, I'm sure you can kind of add on to that.
Yeah, we think or believe this is the first written instance of someone with a Lancashire, of a black person being written down with a Lancaster dialect. That this is the first time in writing that I know of. So that's something that people can look at and could maybe correct us on, where a black person is talked about as having a Lancashire dialect. So it could be a very important kind of piece of evidence, this one. I think I agree with Carol that they talk about a broad Lancashire dialect, and I think however natural it is for kids to bring up to develop accents, to have a broad Lancashire accent dialect, I think has been been in Heysham for at least a few years, and so
Yeah.
does Drahoslava, I'm sure. But we're just covering ourselves. Just we there are so few facts about this boy, and it's amazing to hear amazing to see what Drahoslava did with those few facts, and has painted a rich picture for everyone here, which I think is great. My questions. I need to get back into the church at Heysham and look at those memorials again. But my question was, did you look in the graveyard for see if there were headstones for the Clarkson family?
I did, and I think there was, but I forgot to take a picture. But maybe that could be a quest for me when I return to England. Yeah, and definitely.
Yeah,
go back.
or someone here who's a bit closer than you could go and check it out. And next time they're in Heysham, we can all go and look for the graves of the Clarksons. We know there's not an Ibo Boy headstone, although. Again, if he was recaptured, that might have been where he would have been buried, I suppose. But we don't know that.
Yeah.
Great, thanks, Drahoslava. It's really interesting.
All right. Okay, I just wanted to mention actually that when I kind of went to Heysham, there was a tour guide, a local. I mean, he was local, and he was actually just showing and talking about the church. And you can see the plaques of the Clarksons. One is by the entrance, and the other one is by the altar. And I just started conversing with him and asked him whether they know that Clarksons had a slave. They had a slave servant, enslaved boy, and he was very surprised, but also it was sort of it was just sort of the disbelief, like, are you sure? It was the sort of like, are you sure? Like, because we don't know about that. Like, like he didn't believe me, sort of like as if I made it up, or it was very strange.
That is so funny when Thomas Clarkson himself tries to get his slave back, that historians today, faced with that evidence, instead of kind of going, oh, that's really interesting, I need to go and reflect on that they're saying, oh, that can't be true. It's kind of it's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've got a question in the chat, and Virginia is raising her hand as well. So it's about how. Yeah, do you want to have a look at?
Yeah. I'm having a look. Oh, what is it Carol's question? What are country marking?
It's Sunita's question. It's Sunita's, and then Virginia is raising her hand.
Yeah, Virginia, if you want to start, I'm going to read the chat.
Okay, thanks. I was just wondering, I've been to Heysham Church and looked at all of that, and also been across to Sunderland Point, and there's a little black boy who's supposed to be buried there, isn't there? There's a grave.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, I can't remember what date that was, if that relates to the same era, or whether you've done any research into that, or whether it connects in any way.
Yeah. I've actually, so that's a Sambo's grave, and it's very similar era, but it's not. Let me just try to find, because I can't recall the dates specifically.
The dates around 1736. Around 1736, so a bit earlier.
So it's a bit earlier. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, we tried to actually identify the ship that Sambo was brought in. Yeah, it's 1730 and 1735 is the approximate arrival of the boy in Sunderland Point. But yeah, this just as much as it relates. That's it, really, I think.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, and the question in the chat then. Sorry, so it's Sunita. So how has this research changed your own perception of the past? Well, for me, immensely. I can't even like, I don't know where to begin, sort of. It's just because, especially as an immigrant, the UK, it was very different, because UK has been romanticized in Europe quite a lot, especially in countries which are sort of post-communist blocs. You know, UK is this model of progress and all. I mean, in everything, especially because of the Cold War. You know, so I have it's been incredibly different. Before I started studying history at UCLan, I was aware of colonial atrocities, but not the level of it. It was sort of vague, and then to see how much it affected rural areas, how much it affected the British landscape itself, and how the severity of it, and especially I think the worst on top of that is the consequent and the, you know, the willing, no, sorry, I'm trying to formulate myself, the purposeful ignorance of some people here in Britain as well, and of someone, you know, who I chose to come to the country and to kind of start to explore all this, and the silence around it. That's what really, like, that what it is disturbing. That's what's so disturbing, is the silence. And yeah, it definitely changed a huge way, big time. And I'm really grateful that I could be a part of the project, I could be a part of the research, and I could kind of slightly at least contribute to this. And because especially this boy in particular, and so many other voices that are not heard, they just deserve to be known. You know, this is the history that we should really start talking about. We need to talk about it, and it's been just an honor that I could help to uncover at least a little bit of it. So yeah, thank you for the question.
I've got another question, because I can't remember this bit of the research. Did you find evidence that the Clarksons had received compensation from for owning slaves? Yeah. No. That's why, again, that we have two supportive arguments, that actually the boy wasn't returned, you know, to the owner, and plus that he probably, we're not sure, he might have been the only one, but we don't actually know. But yeah, there is not a mention of compensation, or not like one we haven't found yet. There might be, like, I don't want to, you know, exclude it completely, but yeah, that's great. And to an extent, if he was a domestic servant, which was what we assume, he, you know, he might have been a solo slave. They might have had other enslaved people, but often there was just one slave who they'd replace, you know, at certain times.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you know, that, yeah, they might not, but when he died, they might not have replaced him, or when he escaped, they might not have replaced him. So yeah. Then, because compensation comes in 1838, which is quite a long time afterwards, isn't it? So yeah. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Sunita actually has someone else. Yeah, Fozzie.
Hi.
Hi.
I was just struck by your comment that the tour guide at the church was shocked by the revelation, and then thinking about in the first session, Alan mentioned that the Priory in Lancaster has a plan to put a memorial to enslaved Africans in the Priory grounds. So I was just curious whether there's been any discussion, or there's any plan to have some kind of you know, memorial, some account of the history at Heysham.
Yeah, so actually that's something that I talked with Alan. I think it was a few months back, and because I think it would be quite good to do it, and I'm going to kind of like relate this to Sunita's comment. So yeah, I actually forgot to mention that in Heysham churchyard, there is another gravestone of a black person buried there in Heysham. So we know that there was a black presence in Heysham, yeah, absolutely. So that's why, and I think if we would put it together, it definitely deserves something like that to be created. That's a really good point. But at the moment, there is no proper solid plan, right, Alan? Or is there, like in the Heysham particular?
There's no marking of any of this at all in Heysham. There is a new initiative for all churches are being encouraged to, in the wake of Black Lives Matter, to look at their memorials in the church and to come to terms with them. And so this would be an important thing for Heysham to do. So Sunita's talking in the chats about how we should work with the church community there on this. And I'd be very happy, and I'm sure you would be, to share this research with them. I tend not to have any very good contacts in the church. I think Sunita's got better contacts than me. But yeah, through our contacts in Lancaster Black History Group, that's something we can do. I think I think Fuzz is right to talk about that encounter you had and the kind of strangeness of it. The thing to note is that the information about the runaway slave only became available in 2018 publicly.
Yeah.
So that the new database, Runaway Slaves from Glasgow, that information was out there in the world, but they gathered it together. So there might have been the odd researcher who knew about it, but actually I don't think there was, because I've never seen anything in any, and I'm obviously kind of keep an eye on this. So what we have here really is this this new bit of information. The shock isn't that the tour guide doesn't know about it, because why would he necessarily? The shock is in his reaction to saying, well, but that can't be true. It was how's that true? Where's your, the kind of defensiveness around it,
Exactly.
and I think that defensiveness comes out of that kind of British idea around, kind of that we were the good guys in this, we were the abolitionists, we were the one, and does work into what Julie's called denial. It's that if you started to work into this, you'd find again and again. And this is if you read the accounts of Heysham Church, the Clarksons are central to how it continued through the 18th century and grew as a parish, and how wonderful they were as custodians of that parish community. So to suddenly throw in a Ibo Boy, not only who he had as a slave servant, but who, when he escaped, he wanted to get back at any cost, adds a really nasty element of, of kind of human trafficking and enslavement, which, is obviously difficult. It's obviously difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Judy's right. We're all there's a flaw in us all, and that's very true. But there is a sense in which the worst thing about this is the hypocrisy of the Anglican Church for all of these years, having been so involved in slavery, and then to have spent the time denying it, and to kind of paint themselves as this kind of very different kind of organization.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any more questions or comments? Julie's raising her hand.
Yeah, I live in Garstang, which is only about 10 miles from Lancaster. And this is making me want to research Garstang to see what the Black history is in Garstang. I'm not a historian, but I am very much interested in people. But thank you very much for the whole series. I missed last week because I was on holiday, but I'll watch the YouTube. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. But yeah, you should definitely do. And it's something we cannot stress enough, like you don't have to be a historian, you know, per se, literally, just the interest, just to try to find out, try to uncover something that it might be there, that there is a big chance that the Black history might be in your town, but we just don't know about it. So I would say parish records definitely is a good place where to start. I mean, that would be from my advice, I think. But yeah.
Yes, and Sunita's just said in the chat, if anyone wants any help with doing that sort of local history, Lancaster Black History Group is doing, well, you've been seeing over the last few weeks loads of this kind of stuff, and I've not got any news on Garstang yet, but we'd love to help look into that with you. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm just gonna comment on, I think it was Sunita's remark, that definitely it would be great to like work with the community in Hisham, and maybe there might be more information, you know, about it. And I tried to kind of do that. I tried to ask locals whether they're aware of something, and I spoke to one of the oldest people in Hisham apparently, and there was a lovely lady, and she just mentioned that her grandmother used to tell her that apparently an African person used to come to Hisham in summer and play on drums, and that was her grandmother, and she was quite old. Like I dare to guess her age, but it's just something that she, you know, it was like a little thing, because I was just asking whether there is any public memory, let's say, you know, of Black prisons in Hisham. But yeah, that was it only. But it would be great to actually start working with that. Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment, really, Drahoslava. I just think it's amazing. Sorry, I'm going to make it Drahoslava embarrassing. I think it's amazing that Drahoslava's come all the way from the Czech Republic and has informed us so much about her own history. When she applied to be my undergraduate research assistant, and this was what, 2018, or was it 2019?
Yeah, it was late 2018, I think. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and you know, it was a bit of a gamble in a sense, you know, to kind of think, you know, because she's very, very good. She was an excellent candidate, but I just sort of, you know, there is that, you know, this is a totally alien kind of country in lots of ways. You know, it's very different, and I just sort of thought, you know, you want that external perspective is really brilliant, but you know, there's also the problem of actually kind of, you know, understanding the nuances. And immediately Drahoslava got to understand the nuances. So in fact, she became a kind of secret weapon, because you could send her into somewhere like Hisham and she doesn't have any, there's no baggage. She'll ask the questions which I'm too scared to ask. You know, so that's so that sort of teaches us a lot. And Drahoslava went on to work with a large group of American students that came over on an exchange and did some amazing work with them. And now she's working on a project we've got looking into Manchester and its hidden links to slavery and abolition as well. You know, I think it's really, really useful to have that external perspective, as well as just very, very highly tuned historical skills. So, and I think we all saw that today, really, in a great presentation.
Oh wow! Wow, thank you. Thank you, I'm blushing.
Yeah, I knew I was going to embarrass myself. But I think I didn't want that necessarily to be the end, but I thought I'd get it in just so that so that the maximum amount of people are here, really.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. No, it's an honor.
Can I ask a question? This is for Drahoslava, and it wasn't about the Ibo Boy. You said something earlier on about how you came to England and you saw the impact of, I think, colonialism on our rural villages. And I was really curious about that and wondered if you'd be willing to say a bit more about that.
Right. No, what I want to say, to kind of be precise, is just because I kind of perceived as colonialism as very external thing, something like outside of Europe. Do you know what I mean? And I haven't kind of realized how much the world exploitation, sort of how it returned to UK. I didn't know that even rural areas in UK could be impacted in a way. Yeah, I literally, I had no idea. And then I came to Hisham, and then I started to, talk to people, specifically also an artist, Jade Montserrat. I'm not sure if you know her. So yeah, with people like them, it kind of opens, it brings up the perspective. That's what I meant. So when I came here, I haven't realized that it could affect, the colonialism could affect even rural areas in UK. Yeah, because I've always sort of lived in the notion that it's mainly centered to big cities, to big ports, like Liverpool, Manchester, London, Lancaster, and Scottish cities, but not rural areas. That's sort of, it's the landscape contrast, I would say. That's what really that was a striking part. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Alan.
Yeah. Drahoslava mentioned Jade Montserrat, who's another student of mine, but also a brilliant artist. And she has a study day, which on Thursday, and I'm just putting that in the chat, at the Manchester Art Gallery. I'm interviewing her at study day about her work, and her work as a Black artist. She's from Scarborough. Is looking at people like the Ibo Boy. Really, it's looking at the kind of Black Atlantic in the north and in the rural, and she does lots and lots of work around that. And the Ira Aldridge study day is around Ira Aldridge, who's a Black actor who acted in Lancaster in the 19th century and was the first Black man to play Othello. And it's from Manchester Art Gallery, this study day, where she's got an exhibition happening because they have the first portrait of Ira Aldridge, which was done in 1826 in their collection. And she's working on that and thinking about the Black presence in Northern Britain through that. So I've just put the link if anyone wants to join us on Thursday, or if you know people who are interested in this. Jade is just a stunning young artist, and I think some of you know her work here on the call. It's just to let you know that's happening.
Yeah, thank you for pointing it out. Yeah, I'm quite excited. Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. Thank you. It's been amazing, and I'm excited for next week then. So thank you all. It's been a pleasure. Bye.